Well, the 2026 midterms have already begun. Party leaders are recruiting candidates to run and flip House seats and Senate seats with the ultimate goal of expanding their footprint in Congress. On the House side, Republicans currently hold a 220 to 212 majority with 3 vacancies, and on the Senate side, the Republicans hold a 53 to 47 seat majority right now. And historically speaking, the party in control of the White House does not do great in the midterms. On average, in the House, the party in power in the White House loses roughly 30 to 40 seats in the House and roughly 4 seats in the Senate in the midterms. And with a Republican razor-thin majority, history isn't exactly on their side, but it may kind of be. And we're going to discuss that today. Now, the president's party, like we said, almost always loses House seats in the midterms. Since 1934, the average loss is about 28 seats. In recent history, it's kind of closer to 40 seats. You saw during Obama's midterm, you saw that Republicans gained 64 seats in the House, 6 seats in the Senate. You go to Bush, Republicans actually gained 8 seats. Now, that was post 9/11. There's a lot that was going on at that time. There's only 2 times in history, or I shouldn't say in history, in recent history, where the party in power retained or gained seats in the House of Representatives or the Senate. That would be 2002 with George Bush, and 1998 with Bill Clinton. Now, in 2026, Democrats have really a goal of flipping. They only need to flip 3 seats to get a majority in the House of Representatives. Now, on the Senate side, it's a much, much more difficult game that you're going to be looking at here, but we're going to get into it. So early ratings from Inside Elections show that there's roughly about 64 battleground seats in play in 2026. 10 toss-ups, 13 tilts, 22 leans, and 19 likelies. And there are more Republican seats in the toss-up category, meaning that the GOP is stuck defending more vulnerable seats than the Democrats. And Democrats, like we said, just need to gain a net 3 House seats in order to flip the House. And currently they are targeting 35 Republican-held districts, including some districts that Donald Trump won by big margins in 2024, like Arizona's 6th congressional district. You look at Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district. There are some big races here, and they're banking on voter backlash against Trump's policies like tariffs if their wallets are hit hard by it. But as much as the Democrats may have opportunity, the Republicans aren't helpless. Let's not start lying about this. Trump's 2024 victory showed strong voter energy, and the GOP is targeting 26 Democrat-held seats, many which are in districts that Donald Trump won. Look at places like Maine's 2nd congressional district, where Jared Golden won by 0.5 percentage point, but Donald Trump wins by, 9 percentage points? 9 percentage points he wins by there. Plus, redistricting fights in Ohio could protect GOP seats if courts don't get involved in everything. Now, I think right now my prediction would be is that the House probably flips blue. I think Democrats most likely will take control in 2026. But as far as the Senate goes, that's a completely different story. I truly believe that Democrats do not have an opportunity to pick up here. They don't. Where are you going to go? Like, I have the Democrats ceiling currently at 49 seats. They hold Michigan. They hold Georgia, they flip North Carolina, they flip Maine. They're at 49 seats. I don't see them winning in Florida. I don't see them winning in Ohio. I don't see them winning in Texas. Like, Texas might be a little closer, but I don't know if we're going to get back down to what we saw in 2018 where Ted Cruz won re-election by 2%, 2.5 points. I think that's kind of far-fetched to think that way. I think maybe closer to 4, 5, 6 points we could see. I just don't see it getting that close. But ultimately, these are the toss-ups right now. I have Republicans, their ceiling, or I should say the floor for the Republican Party then at 51 seats going into this race. Now, on the Senate side, we know that the president's party often loses seats in the Senate, which has averaged about 3.5 seats that they lose in a midterm election since 1934. But Republicans did buck this trend. Go back to 2018. Republicans actually picked up, they gained 2 seats in this election here. I should say. Democrats flipped Nevada and Arizona, while Republicans flipped North Carolina, where you had Heidi Heitkamp. You had Missouri with Claire McCaskill, where Josh Hawley flipped that seat. You saw Bill Nelson and the former governor, Rick Scott, beef it out in Florida. You saw in Indiana, you had Mike Braun beat former Democratic Senator Joe Donnelly in this election. So ultimately, Democrats, they did not net any. Republicans actually netted 2 seats in this map. Now, out of these seats here, about 35 seats that are up for re-election, 22 are Republican held, 13 are Democrat held. But of those 20, most of them are deep red seats that we're looking at here. You're looking at places like Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. Even look at Ohio, Florida, South Carolina. I think that, and South Carolina I probably should have as a solid Republican seat here. But even like Kansas, Texas, Alaska, there just isn't as much. Democrats are stuck defending much more tougher races. This is the current makeup of the Senate right now. Democrats control Minnesota, Michigan, Georgia, and New Hampshire. Republicans have North Carolina and Maine. So out of the competitive seats, Democrats are stuck defending 4 out of 6 competitive seats that we have here, which just is not good for them. Ultimately, I think Republicans, even though we know that the governor, Brian Kemp, is not running in Georgia, Republicans still have a serious opportunity to pick up this seat. Jon Ossoff is the most vulnerable Democrat going into 2026. Like, there is no doubt about that. He is the most vulnerable Democrat going into this race. Jon Ossoff won a very close election back in 2020, lost the initial first round to David Perdue by roughly 90,000 votes, but in the runoff beat David Perdue by roughly 50,000 votes in Georgia. That was after Donald Trump had lost the 2020 election. This went to a runoff. Actually, both seats in Georgia, both Warnock and Ossoff's, both went to a runoff. They both won in that runoff. Now you look at some place like Michigan, where you have incumbent Senator Gary Peters retiring, not running for re-election. And this is an open Senate seat, a state that Donald Trump won in 2024. He won the state by what, a point and a half? About a point and a half he won by in 2024. And Democrats like, you have Haley Stevens, who could potentially run there. We're also looking, there's also someone else, and I'm just going to try and get this pulled up real quick. But Haley Stevens is probably seen as the front runner as of right now. Mallory McMarrow is also a big name. And on the Republican side, you have Mike Rogers, who lost by about 19,000 votes in 2024 to Alyssa Slotkin in this race. So historically speaking, you would see that Democrats should, historically speaking, by the averages, pick up control of the Senate. If they win 4 Senate seats, 3.5 Senate seats, I know you can't win the half, and obviously, if they need 4, they can't do 3 because then J.D. Vance has the tie-breaking vote. But realistically, like, how do they get there? Okay, they win Michigan, they win Georgia, they win North Carolina, they win Maine. Like, that's pretty tough. That's a pretty tough. It's like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think Republicans would have to have a terrible night. Not only would Tom Tillis have to lose, I think you'd have to see Roy Cooper in this race in North Carolina if Democrats were to pick up this seat. I don't know if Wiley Nickel is the guy who's going to flip. He could be. But also in Maine, I just don't see a serious Democrat challenger to Susan Collins. I don't. I don't see a serious challenger for her. Maybe Janet Mills, who's the current governor. Like, that's about it. We have a former chief of staff to U.S. Representative Katie Porter, who's running in this race. That's all we have right now. Susan Collins, as of March, had $3 million cash on hand, and the National Senatorial Republican Committee already said they are willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in this race. Do I think that she's going to win by the margin that maybe she won back in 2014, where you're winning by 37 points? Or go to 2008 when she wins by 22 points at the same time that Barack Obama wins the state by 17 points. Do I think that's the reality we're staring down right now? No. Do I think that Maine will still vote for Susan Collins by probably at least 5 points? 1 to 5 points? I think so. Do I think it's going to be a smaller margin than 2020? Yeah, I think so. But also, like, it's very, very probable that we could be right in the 5, 6, 7, 8% margin range that we could be staring down here. That is not a far-fetched idea. Now, there are some special elections on the Senate side. You have Ohio and Florida, where you have John Husted, who was appointed to replace J.D. Vance when he became the vice president. And then in Florida, for Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, you had Ashley Moody, who replaced him. So both of these are Republican leaning seats. I have them not as solid seats as of right now. One in Florida, Ashley Moody, she was the former attorney general. She's won statewide elections. I think as this goes on, I'll probably classify this more as a solid Republican. We're leaving it as a likely Republican as of right now, simply just because it's a special election. In Ohio, I have this as a lean Republican, simply because we might see Sherrod Brown in this race. We know Amy Acton's going to be in this race. We could see Sherrod Brown on the governor's side. You could see Tim Ryan. I still think at the end of the day, John Husted wins this race. I think people seem to be more focused on the governor's race in Ohio than necessarily the Senate race. And Republicans across the board are really favored to hold the Senate. Even if Democrats gain a seat or two, it's very unlikely that they're going to win. Now, what could necessarily tip the scales? Now, go back to 1998. What did we see in 1998? 1998, there was two things. Huge backlash to the impeachment of Bill Clinton. Number two, the huge economic gains. You had actually a balanced budget, a very balanced budget. You saw Bill Clinton making actually strong economic policy decisions, which was very, very good and popular in the country, and really just kind of a backlash, a whiplash against Republicans. How could this happen in 2024? What could we see, or in 2026? What do we need to see in order for that to happen? Obviously, the Senate, we think that's pretty locked up. But as far as the House goes, this is where it's really going to matter. Where is the House at? How do we perform in places like Colorado 6? How do we perform in Alaska? How do we perform in places like California's 13th congressional district, or their 45th congressional district, or the 27th congressional district? You go to New York. Look at New York 19. Go down here. Mike Lawler, New York 17th congressional district. He may run for governor. This might tilt this into more a toss-up race. You know, this was held, now before redistricting, this was all held by Democrats right in this area. Now Mike Lawler holds this area. Ultimately, I think if he runs for governor, I think this could go back to the Democrats. But we're also going to see, go down south here in the state, Tom Suozzi in New York 3 and in New York 4. Those are also potential states that could flip, that are considered toss-ups, I guess you could say. Go down into Texas. Look at Texas 34. This is a huge one. You have Vincent Gonzalez, who will be running here. You also have some very vulnerable Democrats right here in Texas 28. So a lot of different vulnerable Democrats across the state. I think also New Mexico number 2. For the Republicans, look at Gabe Evans, Colorado 8, and Will Hurd, Colorado 3. Those are going to be very, very competitive races. You go to Virginia, you look at Virginia 2, Jen Kiggins, that's going to be a competitive race. Vindeman, is it Vladimir? Eugene. Vladimir's his brother. But Eugene Vindeman won only by about 2.5 percentage points. We'll see how this is affected, especially with all the restructuring that's happening in D.C. You know, a lot of those people live in Virginia. We're going to see exactly what happens there. But go to Iowa. Look, Iowa 3, Iowa 1, Mariette Miller Meeks. That could be a big election. Derek Van Orden, Wisconsin, Congressional District 3. You go to Tom Barrett in Michigan's 7th Congressional District. You look at John James, Michigan's 10th Congressional District. That could be probably a closer election, especially if John James decides that he's going to run for governor. Actually, he is running for governor, so that could be a closer election there. Some other places, you can look at Jared Moskowitz, Florida's 23rd Congressional District. This could be another tight place where we could see a serious amount of money that's being poured into these races here. But if Trump's policies, like cracking down on illegal immigration, cutting government waste, delivering results, you want to know an interesting fact? The most popular, as of right now, the most popular government agency as of right now is DOGE. You have over 75% of Americans support DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Don't listen to the fear-mongering from the Democrats because they're totally full of it. They're totally full of SHIT. Totally full of it. Now, yes, the midterms do favor the party out of power, so Democrats could benefit from an anti-Trump sentiment. But Trump's unique ability to drive GOP turnout, even in off-ballot elections, could counter that. But also we know that, Obama dealt with the same issue. He could drive out waves of people for a presidential election when he was on the ballot. But when he wasn't, it was tough. It was very tough. Look at 2014. Look at the red wave that swept across the country in 2014. Republicans, 247, picked up a ton. They net 13 seats in that race. 13 seats you saw in that race. So I think that in 2026 is going to be a very, very interesting race. I think that the Senate is very clearly going to stay in Republican hands. Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire are all going to be kind of tough. But I'm not really... I don't have any hope for the Democrats there. Now, on the House side, I think Republicans really need to put it into gear. Something that Republicans need to do. A, they need to continue to deregulate our economy. They need to unleash energy independence. Okay, this big, beautiful bill, this one big, beautiful bill, yes, is it a terrible bill? It adds so much to the deficit. But there's a lot of things, like the alternative to this bill here is taxes are going to go up 50% for the average American. How is that going to help Republicans when taxes go up? We're going to expand the SALT deductions to roughly, it's going to quadruple to $40,000. That's going to help in places like New York 19, New York 17, New York 3 and 4. Look at places like California 13, 45, and 27. But so we're just going to have to see how this all plays out with the Trump administration. Is Donald Trump able to get this reconciliation package pushed through Congress? That's going to be a big if. We've already seen that the Senate is very much a no-go on the current House revision of the bill. But what is the alternative if you don't do that? But I also think that the House has really, really been lethargic. They have not put a lot of these cuts, this waste, fraud, and abuse that they found through the Department of Government Efficiency. They have not solidified it into law that we are not going to spend money on this anymore. We're not going to spend money on LGBTQ indoctrination in Pakistan. We just are not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. And the House is so pathetic that they haven't done anything about it yet. They haven't even tried to do anything about it. And so I think that's going to be a big thing. And for those reasons, I think that the House will go to the Democrats. I don't think the Republicans in the House have showed that they're worthy of lead-in, that they're worthy of continuing to hold the House. And what does that mean? That means it's going to be 2 years of impeachments, shams, witch hunts. That's what this is going to be. Millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars is going to be spent on ridiculous things. Ridiculous things. Hopefully that would play good for 2028 when hopefully a Republican like J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis, maybe Marco Rubio, you see something good happen there. But the Republicans better pull their act together and quickly. Why is it that they work 3 days a week and then they need a long weekend and another long weekend? Get your ass to work. Honestly, who works 3 days a week and gets to make $200,000 a year? It's a complete joke. It's a complete joke. The House has really shown that they are not worthy of retaining the majority that they have in the House, and they should really start to work hard to make sure that they can retain the majority. But that is going to wrap things up for today, folks, on what the history trends tell us about the House and Senate races in 2026. So if you like this video, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.